There was a time not so long ago when football fans around the world dreamed of a solution to the sport's oldest frustration. The handballs that went unseen. The offside goals that decided championships. The blatant fouls that referees somehow missed from 10 feet away. Every supporter of every team in every country had experienced that sickening moment when injustice stole something that should have been theirs. And so when the promise arrived, wrapped in circuits and cameras and the unshakable confidence of technology, almost everybody welcomed it. Finally, there would be accountability. Finally, there would be truth. Finally, the game would be fair. That promise has now become the sport's most expensive and spectacular failure. What we are watching in this World Cup is not the triumph of accuracy. It is the slow-motion collapse of everything the beautiful game was supposed to be. The system built to end controversy has become controversy itself. The technology designed to eliminate doubt has manufactured more doubt than football has ever known. And the organization that sold this experiment to the world is now staring into a void of their own creation, wondering how something so perfect could have gone so wrong. To understand this disaster, you have to go back to the beginning. When the video assistant referee system first arrived on the scene roughly 9 years ago, its mission was refreshingly modest. The architects of the system understood that football is a flowing, organic thing. They knew that stopping the game too often would destroy its rhythm. They recognized that referees are human beings making split-second decisions in an environment of chaos and pressure. So they designed VAR to be a safety net, not a replacement. A quiet presence in the background, ready to catch only the most catastrophic errors. The ones that changed games. The ones that haunted tournaments. The ones that made fans feel cheated. The founding principle was articulated with beautiful simplicity. Minimum interference. Maximum benefit. Remember those words. They matter. They were the philosophical foundation upon which this entire technological experiment was built. They were the promise made to players and coaches and supporters around the world. This system would not re-referee football. It would not examine every tackle under a microscope. It would not turn the sport into a courtroom drama. It would simply be there, waiting, ready to step in only when disaster struck. The right question, the officials said at the time, was never whether the referee was correct. The question was whether the referee was clearly and obviously wrong. That distinction mattered. It preserved the humanity of the game. It kept the chaos and the passion and the beautiful unpredictability that makes football the world sport. It understood that perfection was not the goal. Fairness was. Now look at what has happened. For this World Cup, FIFA did not dial the system back. They did not refine it or restrict it or return it to its original purpose. They did the exact opposite. They cranked it up. They expanded its reach. They gave it new powers. They added 4 entirely new areas where the video officials could intervene, could insert themselves, could overturn decisions made in real time by human referees who were standing right there on the pitch. The statistics are staggering. In the 2018 World Cup, there were roughly 20 VAR interventions across the entire tournament. In Qatar in 2022, fewer than 30. This tournament blew past 100 interventions before the quarterfinals even began. Think about that number. 100 times the video officials reached into a live game and changed something. That is not a safety net. That is a completely different way of officiating football. The pace of interventions is running at roughly 1 overturned decision every 2 matches. That is higher than the last World Cup. It is higher than a full season of top-flight club football anywhere in the world. Red cards have more than tripled compared to the previous 2 tournaments. 13 players were sent off before the quarterfinals even arrived. The system did not grow. It exploded. It metastasized. It consumed the game it was supposed to protect. Minimum interference became maximum interference. And the benefit? The benefit is where this whole experiment falls apart. Because it is not simply about how often the technology intervenes. It is about what those interventions do to the actual experience of watching football. The sport's entire magic is built on momentum. The surge of a goal. The explosion of celebration. The primal roar of a crowd releasing weeks of tension in a single beautiful moment. That is what makes football unbearable in the best possible way. That emotional rhythm is the heartbeat of the game. VAR sabotages exactly that. Consider what happened to Croatia against Portugal in the round of 32. Deep into stoppage time, on the very last kick of their tournament, Croatia scored the most improbable equalizer you could ever imagine. A scrambled goal that sent an entire nation into raptures. Players collapsed in joy. Fans wept in the stands. Commentators struggled to find words for what they had just witnessed. And then more than 2 minutes later, a screen took it away. 2 minutes and 30 seconds of a nation celebrating before the rug was yanked out from under them. Not for a bad tackle. Not for a deliberate handball. Not for any foul that anyone in the stadium had actually seen. The goal was disallowed because the ball, on its way through a forest of legs, had faintly brushed the hair of a Croatian player. By a matter of a single strand, a teammate was deemed offside. The human eye could not see it. The ball did not visibly deflect. But a sensor buried inside the ball felt that microscopic contact. And that was it. Croatia were out of the tournament. Luka Modric's 24-year international career ended. Not on a defeat. Not on a brilliant goal by the opposition. On a strand of hair detected by a computer. Modric, one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, did not hold back in his response. He said the system is either being used incorrectly or selectively, depending on the size of the team. His own federation wrote to FIFA and called it flatly an abuse of technology. Think about that sentence. A national federation, on record, calling FIFA's use of technology abuse. And Croatia are not alone. They are simply the most poetic entry on a very long list of victims. Iran had 3 separate goals disallowed by the system. 3 goals. In one tournament. Including one where a striker was ruled offside by a single toe on what would have been the goal that put them into the knockout rounds. A human linesman would never have seen it. A human referee would never have called it. But the machine saw that toe. And it made its cold, heartless decision. Senegal had their World Cup ended by a late penalty awarded for the lightest imaginable contact. The kind of contact that happens on every corner kick, on every set piece, on every single play in every single game. But the slow-motion replay made it look like something more. And that was that. A tournament over because of a graze. Egypt, 2 goals up and dreaming of glory, had a brilliant goal chalked off for a foul that happened nearly 100 yards from the ball. 100 yards. The length of an entire football pitch. A scuffle in the defensive half, barely visible to anyone watching, was deemed sufficient to erase a moment of attacking magic. Then they watched a penalty shout at the other end go unchecked, minutes before Argentina's winner. Their coach delivered a verdict as simple as it was bitter. What is happening is not fair. Switzerland had Briel Embolo sent off in a quarterfinal when the system reached in to turn a yellow card for an Argentine player into a red card for a Swiss dive. A decision so convoluted that the BBC's own rules expert questioned whether it even qualified as the mistaken identity it was reviewed under. Swiss defender Manuel Akanji, near tears after the match, said he had never experienced such a one-sided game. Over and over, the same scene. Pure joy. Then a referee jogging to a monitor. Then grief. Celebrations killed in their cradle by a man staring at a television screen. The emotional rhythm of the sport switched off and on like a faulty light. And it is not just goals being erased. It is players being ejected from tournaments. Red cards more than tripled. At least 2 of those dismissals were for fouls the referee missed completely in real time and only produced after a screen replayed them in merciless slow motion. This is the quiet trap of video review. Almost any contact looks brutal when you freeze it and crawl through it frame by frame. Speed is context. The heat of the moment is context. The momentum of the game is context. And the system strips all of that away. It presents a freeze frame as if that was how the game was actually played. It asks a referee to judge a static image, to ignore everything that happened before and after, to make a decision based on a single frozen moment that does not exist in the living, breathing reality of the match. It is like judging a marriage based on a single photograph of an argument. This gets at the deeper wound. The one that goes beyond any single result. The system is quietly strangling the thing that makes football football. It is sanding away the messiness, the subjectivity, the humanity that gives the sport its soul. One former FIFA referee put it beautifully. Football is an art. It is messy. It is subjective. It is human. And that is the entire point. But the pursuit of black and white, machine-verified perfection is erasing all of that. It is chasing toenail offsides and hair follicle arguments that nobody actually wants in the sport. As one U.S. defender shrugged after a controversial decision, look under anything with a microscope, you could probably find something. And that is exactly the problem. If you examine any goal, any tackle, any corner kick in enough forensic detail, you will always find a technicality. A hand that was fractionally offside. A foot that was a centimeter ahead of the last defender. A foul that happened 30 seconds earlier and 100 yards away. There is no perfect goal. There is no perfect tackle. There is no perfect corner. The game is beautiful precisely because it is imperfect. And a game where every moment of magic is provisional, where no celebration is safe until a computer signs off on it, is a game slowly losing its soul. The fans are voting with their boos. They were never asked if they wanted this. They just got it. And they hate it. But here is where the situation curdles into something genuinely dangerous for FIFA. Something worse than boredom or frustration. Because the system is applied so inconsistently, match to match, team to team, it has bred full-blown conspiracy. When a system reaches back 100 yards and 30 seconds to disallow one team's goal, but will not glance up at a camera angle to check another team's penalty shout, people stop believing it is neutral. When it intervenes to send off a Swiss player barely 4 minutes after Switzerland equalized against Argentina, an entire internet decides the fix is in. That is not an accident of perception. It is the direct product of a system nobody can predict. The players do not know what will be reviewed. The coaches do not know what will be penalized. The fans do not know what will be overturned. Every match becomes a guessing game. Every decision becomes a potential controversy. Every celebration is held in suspense. Modric's phrase, depending on the size of the team, is the accusation now hanging over the entire tournament. Egypt filed a formal complaint. England's own manager, hardly a man hard done by, called the officiating erratic and unreliable, warning that a referee can send any team out in any moment. And the single most explosive scandal of the summer, a red card that dragged in a phone call from the President of the United States, was born from a video assistant decision. A system sold as the cure for doubt has manufactured more doubt than football has ever known. Look specifically at what has trailed Argentina. It is the clearest case study of how the system poisons trust. The disallowed Egypt goal. The Embolo dismissal. Messi escaping any card for a studs-up challenge on Algeria's captain. A foul strikingly similar to the one that got another player sent off. Take any one of those in isolation and you can defend it. The system made a technically correct call. The rules were followed. The process was transparent. But line them all up, all falling the same way, all involving the same team, all benefiting the same side, and you understand why what is so special about Argentina became a genuine question and not just a meme. The point is not that any of it is proven. The point is that a consistent, trustworthy system would never have let the question take root in the first place. The system was supposed to be the thing that removed suspicion from the game. Instead, it has become the engine that generates it. Match after match. Grievance after grievance. Until every fan base on Earth is convinced the screen has it in for them specifically. So now let us be honest. The easy move here is to scream abolish the system. And that would be wrong. Because the uncomfortable truth is that the system is usually right. Most of those 100+ interventions corrected genuine errors. The stomp really was a red card once you saw it slowed down. The offside really was offside by the letter of the law. The technology exists because of real, unforgivable robberies. One former coach who led the United States at a World Cup still aches over a blatant German handball on the goal line that went uncalled and helped knock his team out of a quarterfinal. He wishes they had the system back then. He might have made it to the semifinals. His question cuts right through the outrage. Why not make decisions correct? He has got a point. Nobody actually wants to go back to an era where a cheat's handball or a linesman's blink decides a World Cup. The problem was never that the system gets things wrong. The problem is that technically correct and right for the game have quietly become two completely different things. The rules say one thing. The spirit of the sport says something else entirely. And as that same coach also pointed out, if you want to talk about killing a match's rhythm, the 3-minute hydration breaks FIFA slotted in to sell more television adverts butcher the flow far worse than any review does. Which is exactly why this is FIFA's nightmare. And it is a nightmare entirely of their own making. Because the goal of all this technology, the whole reason the governing body embraced it and then doubled down on it, was to make the World Cup unimpeachable. To finally silence the critics. To let the machine deliver a verdict so clean that nobody could argue. Instead, they built the tournament's biggest villain. A system that is usually right and universally despised. A system that ends legendary careers on a hair and knockout runs on a toenail. A system that has convinced half the planet's fan bases that the game is rigged against them and given the other half a reason to sneer at every goal their rivals score. FIFA reached for perfection and accidentally proved that perfection is the enemy of the sport. The threat enemy of the sport. Because football was never supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be human. There is a way out. Give referees back the discretion to look at a technically correct call and say, no, that is not the spirit of the game. Play on. Let common sense overrule the computer. Let the humans who understand the flow and the chaos and the beauty of the sport make the final call. Whether FIFA has the humility to do that is another question entirely. It is worth noting that when asked to explain any of this, the organization declined to answer. 9 years ago, the promise was minimum interference, maximum benefit. This summer, we got the exact opposite. Maximum interference. And a tournament where the loudest, angriest, most repeated story is not a goal or a save or a moment of genius. It is a man in a room in Dallas watching a replay deciding whether the thing you just celebrated is allowed to have happened. That was never the plan. But it is unmistakably what football has become. A sport held hostage by its own technology. A beautiful game strangling itself in pursuit of a perfection that was never the point. The system that was supposed to save football has become its greatest threat. And the worst-case scenario FIFA never imagined has arrived on their doorstep, demanding answers they do not seem to have. This World Cup will be remembered for many things. The goals. The upsets. The moments of individual brilliance. But above all of it, dominating every conversation, shaping every narrative, casting a shadow over every result, will be the screen. The machine. The technology that promised truth and delivered only more questions. The semi-finals are coming. The drama will intensify. The stakes will rise. And somewhere in a room, the screen will be waiting. Ready to intervene. Ready to overturn. Ready to remind everyone watching that in the pursuit of perfection, we may have lost the very thing we were trying to protect. Football was never supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be ours.